Alright guys, got a little video review here on some new digital gauges, so these little ones here. I've got one mounted to the side of my Impact M3, so if I turn that on for you and then show it to the camera, you can see that the digital readout on the side there is nice and easy to see. With the gauge being nice and small, it does give lots of clearance for the cocking handle, so it's not anywhere close to the cocking handle, and you've got plenty of room for your fingers, so the gauge isn't in the way. Now these gauges have been given to us free of charge from the manufacturer, but we will give you our honest opinion, as well as testing them against a high quality Keller gauge. Very briefly, before we get into that though, I do just want to mention that it is the Pete's Airgun Farm boot sale on the May 27th. So if you've got something airgun related to sell, or you're looking to buy something, please pop down and have a look. And the only other thing that I want to mention very briefly is that on Monday, the 21st of May, it is the start of the Air Max UK tour. That tour starts at the Crawley Surplus store and works its way through the UK. With that said, we'll continue on with the gauges. Long-term viewers of the channel may remember these ones here. So these were a gauge that we reviewed some time ago now on the channel. We reviewed them fairly positively. They were nice and accurate, although a little chunky. The manufacturer of these gauges have brought out a new model, which is this one here. This one is 25mm in diameter and 18mm in depth. The older one, this one here, was 28mm in diameter and 23mm in depth, with the actual thread itself being an 1/8 BSP. So the new one is a lot smaller and a lot nicer, being the case is now black over the brass colour. To turn the gauge on, we just push this button on the front once, and the gauge should display whatever pressure. We've obviously not got the gauge connected, so it's just reading 0. I will also mention that the flickering that you're seeing on camera isn't present in real life. It's just to do with the shutter speed of the camera not matching the refresh rate of the little monitor there. And to turn the gauge off, we simply need to press and hold the button for about 4 seconds and it will turn itself off. The gauge does have an auto off feature after about 60 seconds, so just be aware of that as well. And if we take a look in the box, we can see another nice feature of these gauges. So the new ones are coming through with rechargeable batteries built into the body. So if we take the charging lead out there, we can see that by using this in a USB plug, we can use this to charge the gauge whilst it's on the rifle. And that just clips on the front there and is held on by magnets, so it will stay on there as you charge it. Now the only thing I will mention about this is that it does have an orientation, so one way the magnets will be repelled and won't go into the charging port, and then the other way the charger will just flick in there nicely and stay attached. So there we have it. The only other thing that you get in the box is this small white crush washer, which can be used to seal the gauge if you don't have a sealing option inbuilt into the rifle. I'm not exactly sure on battery life just yet. We have been using these gauges for about a week now, turning them on and off a few times a day, and we haven't actually depleted the battery by any considerable amount, according to the little battery sensor on the top there. So if they're anything like the old ones, they should last a considerable amount of time, but the gauges don't have any data features or anything like that, so they don't have a shot count. It's just simply a pressure gauge. In my opinion, that's a good thing. I have had gauges in the past with all the features like the shot count and all that sort of thing, but it's never really worked for sub-12 rifles, and I've always tended not to use it. A nice simple pressure gauge is alright by me. I do really quite like the gauges. They are nice and small. They do fit on the rifles quite nicely. We obviously have one on the M3 here, but you could have it on your pressure gauge, or your bottle pressure gauge I should say, as they are 300 bar rated, so they'll do the job on your rig, or if you want to put one on your bottle pressure, you could do that as well. With that all said, next thing we'll do is bring over my little test block here. So this is used for testing gauges. What we've got at this end is a super high quality, nice and accurate Keller gauge. So this is a nice big one. It's nice and accurate. I do trust it for accuracy. We'll put these two gauges in the holes here and test them against the Keller. Also test them against a Wicker analog one and also a segment one. So you'll be able to see how these gauges compare against those two. Right then, and here we have my little setup. At this end we have a high quality Keller gauge. Next we have a manifold, so this manifold here evenly distributes the pressure to all 4 gauges, and then we have an inlet at this end. We have one of my dive cylinders fitted, and we're also pressurising the whole system to about 230 bar. Now we'll turn on all the gauges and we'll have a look what they read. In an ideal world, all of these gauges would read identically the same, but as you can see here we have some slight variation. This one here is 229.2, this one here is 231.3, the segment one seems to be reading about 229, with the analog gauge reading just over 230. So the two cheaper gauges at this end here performing really quite nicely. This one seems to be the furthest out, which is a off reading of about 1.7 bar, although when you consider that this gauge here was roughly £300 when I bought it new, and these two here can be bought for around 50, I think we can forgive a little bit of variation. But still, less than 2 bar deviation from a master set pressure gauge is plenty accurate enough for all PCP airgun use. I'd be quite happy to put these on a regulator or a bottle pressure, and I'd trust that they give nice accurate readings. The last test we'll do is just a quick refresh rate test. So I've just swapped out one of these gauges for one of the FX ones, and we'll test how long it takes for all the gauges to settle after a pressure change. So we'll turn them all on, and then whilst the area is pressurised, I'll just release some air, and then we'll register how long it takes for the gauges to settle. So they all seem pretty much identical. The analog one seems to be the fastest, although you'd expect that, to be honest. But the little gauges here seem to respond fairly quickly without a tremendous amount of lag. With that all said, that's pretty much going to do it for this video. I am really quite happy with the little gauges here. I will leave a link in the description below to where you can get them. They are around £50, but they do seem to work nicely and they are fairly accurate. And with the gauges being nice and small, they do fit on a wide number of rifles nice and comfortably. Last thing I'll do is just measure the gauges on camera so you can see exactly the dimensions for yourself. So 24mm across flats, 25mm across the round, a gauge thickness of around 18mm, an overall thickness of around 27, with the thread on the bottom there being roughly 9mm long, with the actual thread itself being an 1/8 BSP. So there we have it. That's going to about do it for this video, guys. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.